It's November 28th, 2012, and I'm going to try this again. It's a story. Uh, it's a myth. Uh, though it may not be true, that does not make it a lie. And I'm going to try to. I already said this. I already read part of this once, and I'm going to try and read it again, and hopefully I'll do a little better job this time. That great god called Hipahthesose had a stick that was the measure of all time. Hipahthesose and Practicalis were this great one's brothers, but not forged for the adventure of a destiny. He was to be aided by Uniculus and Individualis, brothers of their own. As air, which has no mass of its own, can fill the sails of great traveling vessels, so too did the brothers Uniculus and Individualis fill the sails of the great one, Hipahthesose. Hipahthesose's vehicle of his life. And this vehicle was no mere god, but the goddesses three: variety, multiplicity, and thriving. This great triplicity enjoyed immensely being the chosen vehicle of the life of mighty Hipahthesose. But this made Hipahthesose the unending butt of the triplicity's jokes, torturous jibes, and belittlings. For the triplicities, in all their strivings, alone and together, to bring order to their chaos, they could never achieve it themselves, but only through being enthroned as the great vehicle of another, never for themselves. For if these goddesses ever did manage a vehicle of their own, they would suffer the very torment they made mighty Hipahthesose suffer, belittling jokes and horrendous bigotries. As mighty goddesses, they refused to suffer such personal travesties. This burden did not come easily upon Hipahthesose. His brothers, Hipahthesose and Practicalis, enslaved him in their orderly mechanistic forms, to which everyone had a predetermined purpose and meaning. The problem for Hipahthesose was that all causation became ensnared in the mechanisms his brothers Practicalis and Hipahthesose built. Enslaved together, Hipahthesose met purpose and meaning, as well as their child Causicus, and it was through Causicus's being that the trinity of goddesses would come to be Hipahthesose's great vehicle of his life. Thriving, multiplicity, and variety, having a being of their own without a cause, could never endure the jokes, torturous jibes, and belittlings as a vehicle of life in itself. It was purpose and meaning's child, Causicus, who found in Hipahthesose his being. The two tyrant brothers, Hipahthesose and Practicalis, having enslaved purpose, meaning, their child Causicus and brother Hipahthesose, into their mechanisms, brought a great gift to their family. Their mother, Societas, turned a blind eye upon the enslavement of Hipahthesose. Their father, Democritus, showered them with praise, but they had a sister, Luxurious by name, youngest of them all, and favored by their father, who visited her enslaved brother every day and felt horribly for him. The two tyrant brothers lacked for nothing. They were favored by their blind mother, praised by their powerful father, and luxurious of no threat to them, so they thought. As all know, luxury is foe to none. Toiling within the mechanisms of the tyrant sons of Societas and Democritus, their enslaved son Hipahthesose befriended, as the enslaved always do, purpose, purposus, and meaning, and was introduced to their child, born in slavery, Causicus. Being of privileged birth, Hipahthesose was well taught of all the free world, and came to instruct this child of burdens with the urgings of his parents. In being taught of things he had never seen, heard, or known by Hipahthesose, Causicus came to imagine what it was to be outside the enslaving mechanisms of the aristocracy that Democritus and Societas built by their tyrant sons Therosus and Practicalus. Causicus became deathly ill, drenched in sweat and hives, and racked by convulsions. Hipahthesose had never known sickness and was gravely disturbed. Causicus's parents, out of pity, explained how they were afraid of such a thing happening. Purposus and meaning explained that their kind can only give birth to sons of Causicus's kind. Yet, when they come of age, if they are not free, die a long and torturous death, and give rise to a disease and plague that infects all the lands. Purposus said, "This rite of passage is one of coming to know one's being, and must be prepared for. The initiate must be readied, or it is certain death. But the initiation of being readied also brings on the illness. The only way of quenching the fire of being in Causicus's flesh, which will surely encompass the doom of all the realm of Societas and Democritus, spreading first to us, Purposus, meaning, and Hipahthesose, and then the very mechanisms of your brothers Therosus and Practicalus, is to bring him to the throne of the triplicities. Now, the triplicities, these goddesses, variety, multiplicity, and thriving, are scattered hither and thither throughout the world, and only two brothers can gather them to our call, that these three may ferry us to that yonder shore, where their throne is enshrined. These two brothers are of the most noble stock, but are tormented by the ever-hungry ghost's selfishness. They are individualis and uniculus. The four of us, Hipahthesose, Purposus, meaning, and cause in the throes of being, must get free of these mechanisms of your tyrant brothers, Practicalus and Therosus, and begin the sacred journey to find the noble brothers, which will lead us to the goddess triplicity through an adventure of our destiny. Hipahthesose could only think of one person who might help, his sister Luxurious. Being her father's Democritus favorite, she might be able to influence the mechanisms of her brothers, that the four could find a way out of the mechanisms. Hipahthesose, with purposes and meaning, dedicated themselves to freeing the golden child Causicus, threatening to destroy their world in his struggle with being. Through finding the goddess's multiplicity, variety, and thriving, with the help of the brothers Individualis and Uniculus, if, that is, they can quell their brother's selfishness.